Hang on, buddy. You're listening to the Back Home Network, presented by Home Field Apparel. And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another victorious episode of the Assembly Call, as tonight your Indiana Hoosiers bounce back from the loss to Penn State with a 67-51 victory over the previously unbeaten in the Big Ten Ohio State Buckeyes. The win moves Indiana to 11-3 overall in the season, 2-2 in conference play. It was a game that Indiana started out a little bit sluggish, but got some really great energy from the bench, as we will obviously discuss. Some great play from Trayce Jackson-Davis, and just absolutely dominated the second half of the second half to get the 16-point victory. I'm your host, Jared Morris. I'm here with the coach, Brian Tonsoni, Ryan Phillips, and a special guest, my son, Teddy. His mama is not yet done putting his sister to sleep, so he's going to hang out with us here for the first part of the show. Good to have you, little buddy. Okay, so let's start this show the way that we start every show, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment. And for the banner moment, I feel like you have to go with something from that stretch there late in the second half when Indiana absolutely put this game away. And so I'm going back to the 5:30 mark. Indiana was only up 7 at this time. And Trey Galloway flew in for a defensive rebound, kicks it out to Xavier Johnson. He gets it, takes it down to the other end, gets it into Trayce. Trayce scores. Then on the other end, Trey Galloway makes a hustle play, knocks the ball out of bounds. And it was just indicative to me of the two biggest storylines of this game, which were the energy and hustle that Trey Galloway brought and Trayce Jackson-Davis's absolute dominance on the inside scoring for Indiana. Those two were huge, and obviously we will talk about them a lot as we go through tonight's show. Okay, our Hoosier Proud banner moment, as always, brought to you by our friends at Home Field Apparel, now in their 5th season of sponsoring the Assembly Call, and their first as the presenting sponsor for the Back Home Network. And, you know, as you think about what to do with any Christmas money or gift cards that you received this year, you should definitely consider checking out homefieldapparel.com. Homefield has the largest collection of vintage IU apparel that you'll find anywhere, with beloved logos like 2 different versions of the Bison. And if you support other college teams or have people in your life who do, Homefield probably has something for them too. Their product line now extends to more than 120 different schools with unique vintage logos for all of them. Do you want to pee? No, you're done with the piece. Okay. And no matter what you buy, you know it will be comfortable and the colors will last through many washings. Plus, you're supporting an Indiana-based company that came up through Kelly. What could be better than that? Go to homefieldapparel.com. Use our promo code HOME, HOME, for 15% off your entire first order. That's promo code HOME for 15% off. Once again, the website is homefieldapparel.com. Wear one for the team. I feel like his kind of whining and kvetching here would have been much more appropriate for the start of the Penn State show than the Ohio State game show, but that's okay. Now it's time to move the ball, find the open man, and get some opening thoughts from the rest of our team. And we will start with Coach Tonsoni. It's Tonsoni time. What's on your mind, Coach?
Just a fantastic effort tonight by the Indiana Hoosiers, and Trayce Jackson-Davis really elevated his game. I think maybe some of the post-game comments about him only getting 5 rebounds really resonated with him. I thought he was fantastic all night. We'll talk a lot about Trey Galloway as well, but more than that, this was a game that Indiana needed after the Penn State game, where we were all kind of in shock at some of the offensive or lack of offensive creativity of the players and the coaching staff. And then to get down 15-7, and in our chat, we were a little nervous that offensive kind of stagnant offense was going to happen. And all of a sudden, boom, one substitution, one player who'd been itching to get back in comes in and really changed the mojo of the Indiana Hoosiers. This is more of what we expected to see. This is more of what we need to continue to see. You know, we get down after a loss. We get really excited after a win. It's going to have to be consistent. And I think, Ryan, you said in our text message, we got to bring this on the road. If you're going to be the team you need to be, one game is nice. It needs to be 2 on Sunday, and then it needs to be taken to the road, and it needs to be consistent. But it's a lot more fun talking with you guys after a win than it is after a loss.
So much more fun. All right, Ryan, over to you. Not a lot to rant about tonight, but what you got?
You know, I think that the thing to mention here is that this season, I've said a couple times, and people will talk about the talent on this team. There's not enough talent on this team. That's the problem. They're just not good enough. They're not good. I've said this is a top 25 team if they play right. It is. There's enough talent on this team to be a top 25 team. They prove that tonight. They absolutely prove that tonight. This team, when it is running well, could be top 15. They just beat, number 13? They can be that good if they play right, if they are directed right, if they're running the right sets, if they are all showing high energy. That offense, as you saw when Trey Galloway came in, that offense actually looks good when people move quickly. And they have to move quickly when Trey Galloway's on the floor and move around him because he's going to drive. He's going to dribble through. He's going to make that extra pass. He's going to move. It showed what this can be. The problem is getting it there consistently. And on the road, they have not brought that. They're two halves where they looked pretty good on the road, two halves where they looked horrible, and then the Penn State game where it was bad the whole way. This team has the capability to be a top 25 and occasionally a top 15-ish team. It needs to play like it more consistently. And Trey Galloway tonight was the straw that stirred the drink. I know Trayce Jackson-Davis was absolutely unbelievable. We will talk about him. Incredible All-American performance, the kind that puts you in Player of the Year consideration if you can replicate that a couple more times in big games, certainly Big Ten Player of the Year consideration. But Trey Galloway changed that game and changed this team tonight, because it finally looked like, oh, look what happens when there's some movement. The first few minutes of this game looked terrible. The offense looked terrible. It was stagnant. It wasn't moving. It was Xavier Johnson driving and maybe getting it to Trayce Jackson-Davis. They were the only two moving. The wings were just kind of on the three-point line going back and forth, up a little bit, trying to hunt a shot. No cross-cutting, no screens for them, nothing. Trey Galloway comes in, everybody moves. So this just showed what can happen and what this team is capable of. There is enough talent on this team. I don't want to hear that anymore. There is enough talent on this team to win. They're not perfect, but there's plenty of talent there. They just have to continue to have it used correctly and use it correctly.
Yeah, Galloway was terrific tonight. We had a funny text exchange that I posted on Twitter where I texted you guys and I was like, Trey really, I was trying to say Trey really moves the needle for this team, because we had been talking about how stagnant the offense was. And the point that I made in the next text was he's incapable of being stagnant. Like, Trey Galloway cannot stand still. So if he's out there, for better or worse, there's going to be movement. There's going to be energy. We saw last year as a freshman, a lot of times he would, kind of go and get past a guy, but get himself in no man's land and not have anything to do with the ball. He's obviously gotten better. And this team really needed that movement tonight. Of course, in the text, instead of saying Trey really moves the needle, I said Trey moves the noodle, to which Coach replied, noodle. And so it was very funny. So Megan Mahaffey did have a very good idea that I think we need to have a moves the noodle award now for the bench guy who changes the game. Because this, to me, had all the markings I thought of a game where Indiana was going to need its bench. You're coming off a tough loss. Assembly Hall is going to be nice, but it's not going to be, the huge Assembly Hall crowds with the students in there. So I kind of anticipated a slow start. Now, I thought Tamar would be the guy who would step up and provide a big spark. He really struggled and didn't get back in the game after, his initial struggles. But Trey Galloway was just tremendous, bringing energy. It's one of those games where he had a really nice stat line tonight.
On
8
both
points,
ends, too. I want
3 boards, 4 assists. Yes, 2 steals.
Both ends, because he's usually an offensive guy and he usually gets lost defensively. He brought the energy and was helping the team on both ends tonight.
Yeah, no, he was. He was absolutely terrific. But the other thing that I want to mention, which I think is a huge storyline and cannot get lost, Coach, is one of the big storylines for Indiana through the first part of the season is, wow, look at this defense. They're really, holding teams to, low 2-point field goal percentages. The effective field goal percentage is low. And the retort has always been, yeah, well, let's wait till they play some real teams. Well, tonight they played one of the most consistent scorers in the country in E.J. Liddell. He had 11 points, 3 of 12 from the field. And I think you saw why, because Race Thompson really bodied him up. Jordan Geronimo, when he got out there, stayed with him. And Trayce Jackson-Davis has become a human eraser, and his shot blocking is continuing into Big Ten play. So as fun as Trey was, as dominant as Trayce was on the offensive end tonight, it's not always the most exciting thing, but they held Indiana to 51 points and held E.J. Liddell to his worst night of the season. This defense is real.
Yeah, it was brilliant actually tonight. You talk about Trayce Jackson-Davis's blocks. He was second man off the floor. He wasn't hunting and jumping and then letting guys get baskets behind him. He wasn't giving up. And then a lot of times when you do, even if you're second man off the floor, then there's an offensive rebound. Our guards were cracking down. Like Rob was in there one time. I thought it was a really key moment. We'll talk later where it was still in doubt and there was a fast break and there's an attempted block and Rob got in there and it wasn't the jump ball one, but it was one even before that where he dug it out. So the guards were cracking down. But you were absolutely – I thought, Geronimo hits a three, takes a bad three, but Geronimo was good defensively, short of maybe one possession. That's good minutes defensively. And I thought the rotations, there was not that overhelping in the Penn State as much. Obviously, in every game, you're going to have situations where there's a situational poor defense. You give up a three, you're a little late on a closeout here or there. But boy, tonight it was really connected. And there's supposedly National Player of the Year getting just locked down by the entire Indiana defense, and they couldn't do anything about Trace Jackson Davis. So yes, the defense has carried us and kept us in games all year long, and that's what you need. You really do. And kudos to the staff. I know we got frustrated with the offense and all that, and I think rightfully so, but this defense has been very, very, very consistent, was a big part of tonight's win. The
defense also created offense too.
Yes,
and whether it was direct points off turnovers or just after a good play, they eventually scored. But 16 points off turnovers. And then there were a couple where like it would be a block or something, and then they'd come down, have a good rotation to get a layup. That doesn't count on that list, but it's another basket off of defense. And what I will say too is you mentioned Geronimo. You look at that matchup, Liddell on Geronimo, you're thinking, okay, he's gonna get abused for a little bit. He's undersized. That kid put in a ton of effort. He picked up some fouls, but he put in a ton of effort there and really just let him know, hey, I'm not going to let you go around me. You're going to have to shoot over me. And if I foul you, I foul you. There was one where he got called for a foul. It was not a foul. Liddell fumbled the ball going up, and it was an anticipation call. The officials were actually mostly good tonight. They let him play, but that one was a bad call. That said, I was thrilled with the way Geronimo played with his energy. I agree. He kind of pulled the trigger on that second three too fast, but you know what? He just made one. He's probably thinking, it happens. But defensively, a guy who, again, the stats don't really show up for it as far as blocks and steals go. Race Thompson was phenomenal on Liddell for most of the night, just bodying him up, making him shoot over, making him go around, try and go through the lane to get him instead of going baseline, forcing him back to the lane where guess who was hanging out? TJD was right there to help out. So really just tandem TJD and Race, phenomenal tonight defensively. And Geronimo, I thought when he was in there, he only played for about 6 minutes, but I thought when he was in there, he acquitted himself pretty well defensively as well. The post defense on this team has gotten so good, and you're starting to see the guards trust that behind them. So if they get beaten, they kind of have a feeling like, at least I've got some help behind me. It creates that trust. It maybe allows you, like Trey Galloway did tonight, take a few more chances in passing lanes because you might not get beat the other way if you can recover. So just as a whole, the defense was much better. The only time where I sat there and thought Indiana was getting beaten defensively, and it's not Parker Stewart's fault. It's a tough cover. It's where he was guarding Branham, who's a phenomenal one-on-one player. And it was about 5 possessions in a row where Branham went right at him and beat him. And that's not Parker's fault. He shouldn't be in that situation. But Indiana survived it, so it works out. But other than that, the defense was solid, rock solid all night long.
Early transition defense was a little poor in the 15-7 run, I thought too. But an unsung defensive thing is the job they did on Aarons. The dude hardly misses. He was 2 of 6 from 3. That's just key because whatever they did strategy, and I don't have anything that comes to mind strategy-wise what they did, but they just stayed tight to him, and whoever was guarding did a good job not letting him get too many looks.
Overhelp.
They didn't overhelp. And what
they did a couple times, and he got open. And they got
scrambled.
And this adds to the Stewart problem. You're not helping Stewart. So Stewart's on an island. You're on your own. You're on your own. And then we want that Brandon kid to take pull-up twos. As much as everyone loves the old pull-up twos are a recipe to win basketball games. You don't want to give up baskets at the rim and dunks, and you don't want to give up wide-open threes. You get beat. Pull-up twos look nice, and even if you score 20 points on pull-up twos,
still wildly inefficient.
Yes, it's not. It's just analytically not part of the game anymore.
And late in the game, they made the call when Parker got his 4th foul. They switched Rob onto him, and he wasn't a factor the rest of the way.
Yeah, it was a great scheme defensively. It was executed well by the players.
Matchups worked out perfectly.
Yeah, and just that it was brilliant, I thought, except for the transition defense early.
Here's the thing, too, about a game like this. Because, look, even poor recent Indiana teams have beaten ranked teams at home, right? But what are the two things that typically define those upset victories? Crazy crowds and unusual three-point shooting performances, right? Devontae Green would go off and the crowd's nuts. Jerome Hunter hits a bunch of threes and the crowd was going crazy. And, it's kind of one of those Assembly Hall victories. Here's the thing about tonight. And the thing about those wins is it wasn't repeatable. You just had to kind of hope that, Assembly Hall roulette, you rolled it and it was good for you that night and the crowd's going and Devontae's making his shots. This is repeatable. And to your point, Ryan, they can take this on the road because it was deep. Indiana was 2 of 15 from downtown tonight. If they just if they just make a few good looks, they win the game by 20 plus points, but they made their free throws. They played good, solid defense. They got the ball inside. It wasn't a crazy scoring game from somebody. Trace is your guy, and he put up a lot of the points, but you just had some balanced scoring from the other guys. The bench played. Like, this is the kind of performance that you can repeat and take with you. And that, to me, is the best part of it. It wasn't just a team coming in shell-shocked by a crazy arena and crazy shooting. Like, this was a rock-solid victory that is a little bit different than some of the big home victories that we've had in the recent past. And I think that's something really to be excited about.
Well, we haven't even talked about the offense, too, that can travel, too. When you move the ball and move people and pass and one more pass and pop that ball from side to side and get the ball moving and swinging, people can't guard you. And when we TJ
make
put
other
TJD,
teams scramble the way we've seen ourselves scramble the last couple of years.
They put TJD on the move. It started with the back screen set early in the first half, and then on the break they did a nice job of getting him the ball early instead of just walking it up. Thought the pace was better. They used TJD as a pin screener and a down screener and then putting him in the post. I mean, it was just like 100% opposite of the offensive scheme of the other night. And it was really beautiful to watch once it got going.
I will say, and once the offense got moving faster, you understand the concept of having the shooters just hunt shooting positions on the perimeter. But at the same time, they still need to run screen sets for them. You saw they did one early. It was a double screen set for Parker Stewart. He got out on the perimeter. Somebody jumped out. He drove by, had an easy dump down to TJD for
when he moves, the defense notices.
Absolutely, they have to. And Kopp too. Kopp can be taken because Kopp makes good decisions with the basketball. He makes good passes. He's a good passer. He can drive in, pull up if he needs to, but he's a guy who you trust with the ball in his hands. He may not hit his shots. He didn't tonight. He rushed one of them, but he at least he makes smart decisions with the basketball when he has it. You can run both those guys off screens, get him in one-on-one or situations where the defender's chasing him and have him either take the three or go into the teeth of the defense where somebody needs to help out. Boom. You've got an easy basket. The time they ran that, it was beautiful. It was perfect. And Trace got an easy bucket out of it.
Here's what it does too. When you move people, it moves the defense and it moves the help. And our best player is going to get heavy help and he's going to be located in a block most of the time, whether on the move or stationary posting. But if you move people defensively and move the help, then they've got to be really on their mark in order to get to the double at times. And you could just see they had very little chance to double because TJD got the ball in positions where other defenders weren't there ready. If you just stand in the corners like we saw early in the game and at Penn State, well, you know where you're at defensively and you know where, the double monster or whatever you call it can come from. So it was just so good to see a variety of sets, some pin screens, some loop action, as opposed to what happened at Penn State.
Yep. All righty. Well, coming up as we continue our breakdown of Indiana's 16-point victory over Ohio State, we will point out tonight's meaningful moments that you might have missed, and then we'll go inside the numbers to highlight the most important statistical notes from this game. You're listening to the Assembly Call. Stick with us.
Hey guys, it's Gene Steratore, CBS officiating analyst and retired Big Ten basketball official. I have never listened to the Assembly Call, and to be honest, I don't intend to. But if you listen, make sure you ignore anything Ryan says about officiating. He's really good from the seat of his pants, but I wouldn't trust him on the court with a whistle around his neck. Time has proven him wrong on virtually everything. Take care. We'll talk soon.
That's still my favorite one.
That doesn't get old
tonight.
That doesn't get old.
Stewart is awesome. You're listening to the Assembly Call IU Postgame Show. I'm Jared Morris. I'm here with Ryan Phillips and the coach, Brian Tonsoni. We are breaking down Indiana's victory over Ohio State. And, guys, it is time for tonight's meaningful moment that you might have missed. And, you know, back when he was playing for Indiana, Joey Brunk was known as a guy who would come in from time to time off the bench and provide a spark when the Hoosiers needed it. And I kind of feel like inadvertently he did that tonight. He made himself a couple buckets early, you know, vintage Joey Brunk post moves, patient, keeping his pivot foot, you know. But boy, those celebrations, he was clearly excited to be scoring for the opposition at Assembly Hall. But it almost felt like that was the high water mark for Ohio State. And after that, it was all downhill. And while I know that he and Trace, you know, certainly had a good relationship and were friends, it was pretty clear that Trace was ready to take it to Joey anytime he got the ball near him. So once again, Joey Brunk providing a big spark for Indiana in a Big Ten game that they needed to win.
Ball to the face.
Doink.
Okay, now, so the other meaningful moment that I want to talk about actually happened at the start of the second half. And, you know, the first half actually ended with Xavier Johnson hitting a real nice shot. It was close to the three-point line. His foot was on the line, so they counted as a two. It was 33-30. And I remember thinking to myself, okay, good shot, Xavier. Now let's not get crazy at the start of the second half, right? You just made one shot. And so at the start of the second half, you know, Xavier came out and, you know, it was a lot of what we saw against Wisconsin, right? It was like, okay, Ohio State's going to let him do some things, and he took him up on it. And, you know, he took a couple shots off the dribble that didn't go in. He drove in a couple shots, you know, that just, they weren't the kind of shots that you needed at that point in time. But, you know, he went to the bench pretty soon thereafter and came back in and was much more controlled. And I really thought, you know, outside of kind of the first 4 or 5 minutes of the game when everybody really struggled and the offense wasn't moving, and that part of the second half, I thought Xavier really did a nice job of leading the offense and getting the ball where it needed to go, getting the ball in the post. You know, it's one of those games where I was actually kind of shocked when I looked at his stat line. He had 2 points. He was 1 of 7 from the field, 3 assists. But he was part of a lot of those lineups that were really doing a nice job. And so, Coach, you know, I think this kind of continues a trend that I think we're starting to see from him, which is a really encouraging one. You know, we kind of saw it at the Notre Dame game, right, in the second half, where he's taking all these threes. He goes out and he corrects it. And tonight, he's taking all these shots. He goes out and he corrects it. And we're seeing Xavier kind of those moments when he's out of control be a little bit less, and he's responding when the coaches clearly make a move to hold him accountable and ask him to do something different. And that is, I think, a really, really key piece for this team. And it was a really important part of the run that they made thereafter in the second half, because it wasn't going to happen if he kept doing what he was doing at the start of the second half.
No, I think you're exactly right, and that's the positive, that he's learning the lessons. The next step of positive is doing it more at the beginning of the game and at the beginning of the second half, and putting a complete game in. But I thought X was rather poor for most of the game until that last stretch. In fact, I wrote down at 8:14, X is in, watch the score, because when he was in at the beginning, it was 15-7. And he probably did some good things, and I saw someone in the chat say drew some fouls, yes, but it was 15-7, and I thought the was sticking when he was running the point. That was when the offense was stagnant. And then all of a sudden the subs come in, and I thought things got a little bit better. Same thing to start the second half. 0 for 4 with the turnover, I believe, in the first 3 or 4 minutes. And it's not necessarily the 0 for 4 that's bad. It's the fact that TJD's been dominant and some other players were there, that let's get them the ball. And then, like, the last shot of the half is exactly the shots he needs to take, that when people are paying attention to the other scores, and he gets a kick out, and he can be valuable that way. But the big play, again, was the last 8:15. He was solid defensively, solid offensively, and it showed with that little drop-off pass. I think for the dunk was the final exclamation point on his positive part of the game. That last 8 minutes was he could have floated that in, and it might not have even hurt Indiana because there was a good enough lead, but he made the right play. He also made some one more passes on the perimeter, as you said. So it's like he goes to the bench and there's an ex-whisperer on the bench telling him what needs to be done. Someone needs to do that in the locker room before the game because we need him. He still is our best option. He does a lot of good things, but the ball tends to stick at times. And I did think he had a good response.
And he's also underrated defensively. You know, he took the charges, and he is a guy. He's such an effortless athlete that he can put the full court pressure on. The guy will get a step on him, and he just so quickly recovers back. So it doesn't put anybody out. But he is a pest, Ryan. He just kind of prevents the offense from getting into what they want to right off the bat. And these are some of the things he brings that we sometimes lose, and we just get caught up in the shot selection.
Yeah, there was a play, I think it was in the first half when they were in the middle of that run to sort of take the lead and sort of establish it, maybe sort of later first half. And he was on a break with Trey Jackson-Davis, and there was a defender between the two of them, and he dropped the ball off without, not like a no look, but kind of a shovel to Trace for a dunk. And nobody else on the team, maybe Galloway, but nobody else on the team makes that pass. They see the defender there. They either try and take it themselves or they pull it back out and start the set. Rob Finney is a more cautious player. He probably would have pulled that out. And he's not great. Rob isn't great finishing on the break. So if he goes up to finish it, it may not be a basket. You may give something up there. Xavier Johnson makes that pass, and he has the confidence to make that pass. And that play right there is the reason why he starts and the reason why he plays so much. It's the ability. It's kind of the balls to make those plays. Like that's what it is. I mean,
and the vision to see them.
For a lack of a better word, that's what it is. He just has the guts to make those plays. And sometimes that hurts him because he tries to do too much. But that late drop off to Race Thompson for a dunk was huge. It's just he has that extra thing that nobody on the roster really has. And again, Trey Galloway might make those plays too. We haven't seen him much this year. He looked great tonight. So let's hope that he's another guy who maybe for the second unit can make those plays. But that's why Xavier Johnson's playing, is that play right there and a few others you saw tonight that you guys talked about.
The other thing that I thought was meaningful, and I don't know how repeatable this is, but we saw in the first half, Parker Stewart had a play where he's mostly been a catch and shoot guy, and he was able to get a step on his man, drive in, made a little bit of a circus shot. The kind of plays that he made a lot at Tennessee Martin and just hasn't really made here. And part of it was just his willingness to put the ball, on the deck. He had a good matchup. If he can just do that every now and then, it'll keep guys a little bit more honest. Miller Kopp in the second half, we saw him, make a couple plays where he dribbles in. He had that one little, kind of floater, but he made a couple of those little mid-range shots. And for those two guys, the ability to do that and at least be a threat to blow by you on a closeout is important. If you know that a guy is just going to stand there and either shoot or pass, it doesn't put as much pressure on you when you're recovering out to him. But if there's even a thought that, hey, this guy could, step by me 2 dribbles and hit the 10-footer, or, he could drive in, that would be a really interesting element for those two guys, to add. And especially when they play together, you need at least one of them to be able to, to put it on the deck and drive in. So again, I don't, who knows how repeatable that is, but I thought it was meaningful to see it, and I hope we see it more.
Yeah, my meaningful moment that I was going to bring up actually was when Miller Kopp hit that first step in sort of hook. I mean, it's a floater, I guess, with 13:57 left to make it 42-36. The Indiana had gone more than 2 minutes without scoring, as had Ohio State. It was stagnant at that point. Parker Stewart hit the 3 with about 16:07 left, and then nobody scored on a bunch of turnover or on a bunch of possessions. Kopp had a chance. He hits that. Then Ohio State goes down and hits a 3, and then Kopp comes back down and hits another mid-range sort of jumper in the middle of the key. Those 2 buckets are huge because if you don't have any momentum there, Ohio State hits a 3 in between them, you're back down to a 1-point game. And then if you don't make that second one, they have a chance to take the lead back again. So that was a veteran player recognizing, hey, I'm not getting the looks from 3. Let's wait for the closeout and go by, and took advantage of it. You're right, Jared. The ability to do that. And I've said, Kopp has not been a high ceiling guy for us at all this year. Stewart has shown that he can be by hitting some 3s, but Kopp is smart. He's a very smart player. He's been around the block. He knows what to do with the basketball. He's the kind of guy who, if he's making the extra pass, he's fine not scoring. But he's a guy that they need to, as we said, need to run sets for to get those open looks. But when he has the ball in his hands, I feel confident he's going to make the right play. He doesn't always, but for the most part, he does. And in those 2 instances, he made huge plays for Indiana to keep that lead and keep the pressure on Ohio State.
Yeah, he's had a habit of this where he'll have games like tonight where he only has 4 points, but they're big points. Like I think he did that in the St. John's game, like at the start of the second half, where we're just struggling and we can't get a good look, and he'll hit a baseline jumper or find a way to get a bucket. Like, he's had a knack for doing that, even when he hasn't had big games, finding a big spot to step up. And you need veterans. He's been around the block and he can make shots. And sometimes you just need guys who can do that. So nice to see from him. Let's talk about some numbers. And this segment, Inside the Numbers, is sponsored by the Power Rank, where our friend Ed Fang uses data and analytics to make accurate football and college basketball predictions. He also writes an incredible March Madness guide every year, which we are going to have a special offer for you on once March rolls around. And obviously tonight's victory will go a long way toward Indiana actually being back involved in March Madness. Again, they really, really needed to have. For now, while we wait for that, if you just want sports betting advice with a PhD edge, or if you just like understanding sports at a more analytical level, you should definitely subscribe to Ed's free newsletter. Go to thepowerrank.com/AC to subscribe. That's thepowerrank.com/AC. All right, guys, let's dissect the numbers that tell the story of this game. We've talked about some of them. Two that I want to mention right off the top, Coach. One is free throw shooting. It's nice to look at the free throw shooting and have it be a positive. Tonight, Indiana gets to the line 18 times. How many did Ohio State take? Yeah, Ohio State was 11 for 12. Indiana gets there 18 times and makes 15. If this team is going to make more free throws than the opponent shoots, they're going to win most of the games. And they did that tonight. The other thing that I was really, really interested to see, think back to after the Penn State game and the comments from Mike Woodson. He called out Trayce Jackson-Davis as much as we've seen a player be called out in public, and basically said a lot of the same things that we were saying, which is if Trayce is going to play that many minutes, he's got to rebound better. Has to. And tonight for Trayce Jackson-Davis, 12 rebounds, 5 offensive. Yes, 3 of the offensive rebounds came on the one possession where he kept missing shots. But I thought it was noticeable that he was more active and aggressive rebounding. And there's few things to me that are kind of a positive big picture sign for a team, Coach, than a star and the coach being on the same page and the star responding to the coach. Because, what Mike Woodson calling out Trayce Jackson-Davis does, number one, hopefully it lights a fire under Trace's butt, and this team is going to go as far as he can take them. We all know that. But if your star is willing to be coached and coached hard and can be called out, sometimes the coach doesn't have to say anything to the other guys because it's like, damn, he's calling out Trayce. Well, I better get my stuff together. And so I just thought that the fact that Indiana responded well and that Trayce in particular responded well with such a big game with a new coach, because we didn't really know. It's like, boy, I hope they have a good relationship for this. Well, clearly they do. And that to me was a huge sign. It's there in the numbers and it was there in the eye test watching the game.
Well, your best player needs to be your hardest worker. If not, you got issues inside your program. And I'm sure Trayce Jackson-Davis is off the court. But the Penn State effort, there were times where he didn't rebound and didn't do things. And sometimes if you have a really great relationship as a coach with your star player, you tell them at the beginning of the season, when things go south, I'm coming after you to get to the other guys. Just be able to handle it. If it's too much, come talk to me. I've done that with guys. You got to have a very special relationship of trust in order to do that. And it seems like Coach Woodson has built that, one, just to get Trayce Jackson-Davis back, was very honest with him. And so I think that's been something that this shows. But Trayce was just outstanding in every aspect. So his response to that criticism was the correct response. And that's how you handle any kind of adversity, whether it be basketball or life, is you come back with a great performance. And then you put the icing on the cake by just repeating it and not having to be motivated again in those ways, or not as many times as possible. But I thought that was a huge stat line for Trayce Jackson-Davis all the way across the board.
By the way, KenPom numbers updated. Indiana, number 1 in the country in 2-point defensive percentage. And as we've often said, you sometimes you don't know, okay, what number should I look at with defensive percentage? Oh, they have a good 3-point defense. Well, there's a lot of variance in there. The defense doesn't always control that. One of the numbers that almost all the stats guys will tell you that is actually controlled by the defense is 2-point percentage. And Indiana is number 1. So if you need any more convincing that this defense is for real and a very, very good defense, we'll see if it's elite as the season goes on. But it is very, very good, and that number sums it up. And again, doing it against Ohio State, which entered the game as a top 10 offense, a little bit different than doing it against Louisiana and Marshall, right? So that obviously is a great sign.
And the number I was going to go for, Jared, was the the field goal percentage tonight for Ohio State, 30.8, and they only made
Yeah.
16 field goals in the game. Meanwhile, on the other end, Indiana scored on half of its offensive possessions tonight. I mean, to compare, against a top 10 offense, to just dominate them that way is insanely impressive. 15 turnovers forced. Indiana only had 9, I think. Which has been, again, a bugaboo against a good team. They were able to only have 9 turnovers.
And 4 of them were Trace.
Trace, yeah. One of them, I think were 2 of them offensive foul. No, one of them was an offensive foul, I think. And then it probably wasn't an offensive foul. There's 2 guys bumping each other, and he got called. But yeah, Indiana only shot 41% on the night, and won by 16 over a top 15 team. That's just outplaying the other team. That is because of effort. That's because of energy. And it's because of the defensive mindset that this team has. They shut Ohio State down and did what they had to do on offense. And the last number I'll say is +8 on the rebounds against a very good team with a lot of size.
Add to that, Ryan, 0.785 points per possession.
Yeah.
Against the top offense. That's not your 350 net team or 287 KenPom team that you just held to 0.785. And the percentages that you said. Just an unbelievable defensive performance.
65 possessions for Ohio State. They scored 21 times. That's incredible. And again, only made 16 field goals all night. And it's not like they, sometimes that number's down because you shoot a bunch of free throws. They only got 12 free throws. So it was just the defense was dominant. And that 2-point defense is great because Trace Jackson-Davis has become an elite shot blocker. He's always been a decent shot blocker. He is an elite shot blocker now. And Race Thompson is his running buddy there who does all the dirty work to get guys into position where Trace can block those shots or at least affect them. That's why we're great at 2-point defense, is those 2 guys working their tails off.
Ryan, you're so on point there, too, because that allows you to be better 3-point defense because you can stay on shooters and lock up.
Yep.
You can overextend, and if you get beat, you have a shot blocker back there, and you really have 2, and guys that can clean the glass. As long as you're that second man and not just hunting them and not going to block shots when you're not needed, going when you're needed. That's what Trace did tonight. He went when he was
second
needed.
man off the floor. You said
second man off the floor is
absolutely
just
important.
But you're absolutely
what I'll
right.
say
It
is
just spreads out the defense to many different areas.
Basketball has become a guards game. It has become a guards game. It is such a luxury, though, when you have that backbone on your defense. And it's become a game where everybody wants to recruit the top guards because they stir the drink, they hit the threes, they make things happen. But having that backbone on your defense changes the game for you because it affects everybody who goes into the paint. They have to think about that big guy come to swat my shot. Think about Kofi Coburn. How much, if Illinois didn't have Kofi Coburn, what would they be? He changes the game defensively for them, just like Trace does it for Indiana, just like Race does it for Indiana. It's a different ball game because those guys are back there.
The other important number as we wrap this segment is 18 bench points. Bench was big tonight. And look, this is typically how it goes in the Big Ten. When you're at home, and you've got young energy guys who are on your bench, they typically play better in home games. And for Indiana to be able to take this from tonight and repeat it, we talked about all the things that are repeatable. Well, this is the one that's kind of questionable, right? What are you going to get from your bench on the road? And that's not something where we've seen that consistently. Hopefully Trey Galloway coming back and being a guy who can be a consistent factor. Hopefully that will help. But, 4 points from Durr, that matters. 4 points from Galloway, that matters. Finney only had 2 and missed a number of open looks. But I'll take 18 points from the bench, and hopefully as Tamar continues to mature and get comfortable with Big Ten play, he'll be more productive. He's a better player than we've seen the last few games. Yeah. And so I think it's only a matter of time.
Yeah, ever since he missed a little bit of time.
Yeah. A couple of those bench numbers. Yeah, a couple of those bench numbers. One, they were actually, I think, when it was a 5-man bench out there, a little bit in the first half, a little bit in the second half, they were a +1. That if you're going to eat minutes for your guys, you just don't want to give up points. That was a good. But I thought Durr's free throws were very,
perfect.
Very important tonight. I don't know what the score was. It was at about the 11:25 mark, 11 something, and it was 44-41. Or they had got it to 44-43, but it was a tight game at that point, and he stepped up and hit 2 free throws. Then Geronimo got fouled, and he went 1 of 2, but they went 3 of 4 during that stretch of getting fouled and hitting. If you miss your free throws there, Ohio State could get back in the game. And I know they took the lead at one point, 46-45, something like that. But I thought Durr was those points. And then the other thing you said about Galloway, and we've talked a lot about him, but people go find the box score and just look at his numbers across the board and just appreciate that he can't, because he had solid numbers.
4 assists, no turnovers, 2 steals for Galloway tonight. One thing I'll say, I think we need to see more of Durr, and whether he's in there with Geronimo or whether he's in there with Race Thompson, giving
stagger Race and Trace's breaks.
Yes, I agree.
Play Durr with one of them.
That's what I say. And then play Geronimo with Trace sometimes, or mix it up. I agree. Durr only getting 6 minutes tonight when he looked pretty darn good out there. I think he needs to be out there more. 6 minutes is, and if you look at it, he got 6 minutes. Trace played 34. Like, they were just for each other. That's it. And that was the sub. And
the thing with Durr is he can actually step out and face the basket from 15 feet.
He can make his
playing with
free throws.
Race and Trace.
He draws fouls too. When
the drop off is not that big. There's not that. I mean, it is when you have an All-American. I don't want to.
But it's not going to a freshman.
But it's not a drop off where you're like,
before.
oh my gosh, we're just going to get boat raced if we put a guy in. We can't put him in for any minutes. He not void of talent.
He'll grab offensive rebounds. He draws fouls. He needs to be in there more. Whether you, again, mix and match, like whatever you do.
10 minutes,
play
12 minutes.
Yes.
But
give
just
Trace,
imagine.
and that gives Trace longer to rest, particularly in the first half. We saw Trace really tired a few times tonight. They luckily got timeouts, got breaks, but Trace is getting tired when he runs the floor. He's the entire offense. And then defensively, he's running around trying to block shots and affect things. Even 34 minutes, you're like, well, 34 minutes is, it's the amount of work he does in those 34 minutes that's going to wear him down, particularly when
if he doesn't have to play 34 minutes.
Exactly.
If you could get by with a few extra.
You won by 16 tonight. He didn't have to play all the 34 minutes. I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, it's great having him out there. Don't get me wrong. It was so much fun to watch him tonight. But you got to score him maybe an extra minute in the first half, maybe an extra minute in the second half, maybe 2 either side, so that he's fresher down the stretch in a closer game. You just to see he's a college kid. He's going to get tired. He's not LeBron James who can play 48 minutes and then, go do a workout. That's not how this works. And so I think Woodson's learning it, and he's getting better at staggering things. Race only played 30 tonight. I mean, and it's not like he played 30 because he was in foul trouble. He played 30 because that's what the game called for. So I think he's getting better at it, but he's got to realize you're putting too much on one guy sometimes, and you need to kind of like trust your bench a little bit. And Durr has acquitted himself well when he's been in there. There have been a game or two where the game has not fit him. I get that. It's more of a perimeter game. Get him out. But he's got to play more, particularly in Big Ten play against other big guys. He's 5 fouls to use, and he can play.
Yeah,
I thought the bench was staggered. I thought the bench was staggered a little bit more today. I'm still not a fan of the total 5-man sub stuff, but I still would like to see more staggering that you guys are talking about.
Yeah, look, I'm not certain that Durr needs to play more minutes every game. I do understand, especially for, games that are a little bit tighter, you're going to need Trace out there for a lot of minutes. I would just like to see it a little bit different. If you can have for 40 minutes, one of Race or Trace on the court, they're such stabilizing influences for the team because they're leaders. They can both score in the post. They get rebounds. They bring so much to the table. I haven't yet seen a compelling reason why you have to sit them together and why you can't, take one out a little bit earlier, play Durr with the other one, and just stagger those two. I think that's more important than Durr needing more minutes and the other guys needing less. I would just like to see the timing of those a little bit different. I think that would make a big difference. Anyway, any other numbers, guys, before we wrap the segment and go on to what I think is going to be a heated debate for game ball, because I saw Ryan's tweet and he's dead wrong on this.
Galloway 19 minutes plus 17. That's
okay.
Pretty big effect on the game.
We're gonna go plus minus because Trace was plus 21. All right, let's take it to
34
minutes. Take it to the next segment. Coming up on the assembly call, we're gonna hand out our game balls and we're gonna fight about it. We're gonna give out the Hoosier Hustle Award, the Move the Noodle Award, all that stuff here on the assembly call. Stick with us.
This is Jordan Halls, and I never miss a shot or an episode of the Assembly Call.
Thank you, Jordan. You are listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. Catch us live immediately following every IU basketball game, plus every Thursday night at our website, assemblycall.com. And some Thursday nights when there's a game, we're here doing the postgame show on Thursday night. When you're at our website, make sure that you sign up for our free IU Hoops email newsletter. Over 9,000 of your fellow IU fans have subscribed. Our buddy Tony Adrania will be doing a post-game analysis email that'll hit your inboxes in the morning, so you'll get his analysis on the game. And to join that newsletter, go to join.assemblycall.com. That's join.assemblycall.com. All right, I'm Jared. He's Ryan. He's Coach. It is time now for our game balls. And before we announce our game balls and surely have a debate, I just want to say something off the top, okay? We have a game ball and we have a Hoosier Hustle Award, or which may get renamed to the Move the Noodle Award. There's a reason why we created both. Okay, the game ball is obviously for the guy who had the biggest impact on the game. And sometimes we would have a debate because it's like, oh, well, this guy was awesome off the bench. He really made a big impact. I want to give him the game ball, but oh, yeah, Yogi's amazing. Oh, yeah, Trace is amazing. We shouldn't take them for granted. We added the new award so that a guy who came off the bench and changed the game with his hustle and with his energy would have a place to be recognized. So I say all that just to add context to this segment, because it appears that some of my co-hosts have forgotten what these awards are supposed to represent. So with that said, I will step to the side and allow Ryan to make a flawed case for why Trey Galloway gets the game ball.
You don't know I'm going to say that.
Yes, I do.
I'm giving it to Trey Galloway. I'm sorry. My vote's for Trey Galloway. He changed that game completely. Without him, Indiana was behind with Trace Jackson Davis on the floor and playing poorly. Trey Galloway came in, changed the entire tenor of that game. In the second half, they weren't playing that great. Trey Galloway came in, changed the entire tenor of that game. You can go by statistics or you can go by who changed the game. In my opinion, nobody changed that game more than Trey Galloway. Trace Jackson Davis was great. How many times have we seen him put up huge numbers and the rest of the team plays like garbage and does not win the game? It happens. He was incredible tonight. All-American performance. Trey Galloway, to me, is the reason why Indiana won that game. 8 points, 3 of 5 shooting, 2 of 2 from the free throw line, which I was not expecting. 3 rebounds, 4 assists, no turnovers, and 2 steals. Played great on both ends of the floor. Played great defensively. Affected the game there. Was stirring the drink on the offensive end. Had a couple hockey assists where he was the guy who started the play. Passed to someone who passes to someone who got the bucket. I'm taking Trey. I get why you're going to go with TJD. I get it. For me tonight, I'm sticking with it. Trey Galloway is the reason Indiana won that game.
You get why I'm going to go with the best player on the floor for game ball? Yeah, because it makes sense. Look, Trey Galloway was awesome. He was amazing. So I don't want to take anything away from him. But again, that's what the Hoosier Hustle Award was for. Like Trey Galloway's hustle and everything that
I thought he was the best player on the floor for Indiana tonight.
Trace Jackson Davis had 27 points, 12 rebounds, 5 block shots, and was one of the main reasons why E.J. Liddell, number 1 on Ken Palm's player rater, had his worst game of the season. So don't make it out to be like Trace just fell into some numbers and Trey Galloway did everything. Trey was awesome.
No, I know
Trace was the best player.
I think they both were the 2 best guys tonight for Indiana.
Yes,
sure.
They were.
I'm giving it to Galloway because I think the game changed as soon as he hit the floor. They were flat. He came in, provided a spark, changed the game. That's why I think. And I think without that, if Galloway had not played tonight, this is not the outcome we're discussing here. Maybe they win. Maybe they win a close game. But that was a dominant performance because of the speed at which they played, and he changed that.
Brian Toohey, what's the right thing in the chat? But you better send that in before it comes to me, because I'm all about the chat mob. I want to do what's in the chat mob. And the other thing is Jared just said, can we ship some peas to Ryan to try to keep him quiet like we did Teddy early in the show? And I just can't find send button to buy for some peas.
If only I could feed Ryan peas to shut him up.
Right now, we just need to give Ryan some peas. But
it's not a dictatorship. I'm just trying to explain why we have the 2 awards. So there's a place for Trey to be recognized because his contributions should be recognized.
The chat mob is split right now.
Yeah, I know the chat mob is split. That's why I'm trying to make the case. We did this with Yogi, and we swore we weren't going to do it again. Trace was amazing tonight. And so he should be recognized as well for being the best player on the court when you're playing against a top 15 team. And at some point, you don't take that for granted just because we've seen it from him over and over again. So Trey came in and was amazing. There's no question about it. As we said, he moved the needle. But I think it's really misguided to not recognize Trace as the game ball for being by far the best player on the court who had the most impact on both ends overall. That's all I'm going to say. And then Coach, you get to break the tie, or you
Thanks.
can defer to the chat
I really
box.
appreciate. I now hate peas and carrots. I'm not getting any vegetables in my diet anymore. Brian Toohey's put the pressure on me. So, Ryan's my guy. Jared privately texted me that I have to go with him or I won't be able to host anymore. So there's a lot of pressure on who. Now, to me, I'm going to go TJD because he was absolutely dominant. It is not an easy decision because as a coach, you love what Galloway did. And honestly, Ryan's right. Even if TJD had this wonderful performance, if it wasn't for Galloway, I don't think Indiana wins. So both of you are right. It's just that stat line, the energy, the defense, the all of the stuff together. That performance was absolutely remarkable. And Brian Toohey is no longer Coach Tonsoni fan, but join the club. I got a lot of people on the school board that don't like me, Brian. You can run for school board here in Delphi and just fit right in. So I'm going TJD.
These
Fully
debates are
understand
fun
your
after a win.
Fully understand your decision, by the way, too. I'm not like Jared. I'm not going to rip you for what you said. I'm not going to try to bully you into agreeing with me. I'm just telling you how I feel. It's my pick. That's how I feel.
Okay. We're allowed to have a debate. That's okay.
Sure. But, acting like I'm an idiot because that's my opinion. Come on.
I didn't act like you're an idiot.
Now I got Eddie on my case in there.
We
won.
Being stupid again.
Andy's the one who thinks you're stupid. He's just not here to say it.
He says it to me all the time in private.
All right. It is time for the Hoosier Hustle Award, which was created specifically for nights like tonight so that we can recognize amazing performances like Trey Galloway's. And it is sponsored by our friends at Evansville Security Services. Based in the hometown of IU legend Calvert Chaney, Evansville Security Services provides off-duty police officers to businesses and individuals throughout Indiana. Remember, prevention cannot be measured, so let Evansville Security Services help you prevent a bad outcome today. Go to evansvillesecurityservices.com to learn more. That's evansvillesecurityservices.com. So I guess the question here, I don't really think it's a debate. I think we know who this is going to be. It's going to be Trey Galloway, and it's well-deserved because, there's an energy that he provides, and there's a confidence that he has. He knows who he is as a basketball player. And this is what I appreciate about Trey Galloway. He knows who he is. He knows what his strengths are. And it seems like this season he's bringing a little bit more maturity in terms of knowing when to go, knowing when not to, and how to not get himself in trouble. But his hustle all over the court was just tremendous. And you can see that his teammates really feed off of him. And that, Ryan, to your point, is what was so obvious tonight, that he got in there and he really did change the tenor of the game. And that's what you want from a bench guy. But then you need the starters and the other guys, the stars, to step up and carry it through, because they're going to be the ones who ultimately decide whether you win or lose. But the bench guys can make the big difference to kind of change the direction that a game is going in. That's what he did tonight, and he was awesome. He moved the noodle, and he is the Hoosier Hustle Award winner.
Yeah, and of course, since I couldn't vote for, if we had to vote on this, but I can't vote for TJD because he won game ball, and I wouldn't vote for Galloway because I voted him for player of the game. I want to give a little note to Race Thompson for the work he did on EJ Liddell. He deserves a nod there, since he's not winning an award tonight, but I thought what he did was very important to mention. But yeah, I think that's the thing about having bench player sparks. You remember when Victor Oladipo and Will Sheehy were coming off the bench years ago when we first started this podcast? When it was Juwan Morgan and OG Anunoby could come off the bench, the game, if you start flat, you bring those guys in, you feel like you're getting a reliable performance almost every time. Now they were freshmen, they were younger, maybe not, but it's nice to know you can go to somebody who can change the game. And let's be real, Indiana did not start this game well. It's glossed over because you got a big win. They looked bad in the first few minutes of this game with that.
They're down 15-7.
They were flat. The only guys moving on offense were Xavier Johnson and Trace Jackson Davis. Defensively, flat-footed a lot, getting beat back door, things like that are inexcusable, especially when you're this good at defense. It took them a while to get into this game. When those subs came in, Rob Finney started out pretty well. He came in for X. He was the first sub, I think, in for X, and played pretty darn well and got the ball moving a little bit. Trey Galloway came in, and the whole tenor of the entire game changed when he was only on the floor for 19 minutes. Looking back at this game, feels like he was out there for 25, 30 because of how different the game was when he was on the floor, and then that carried over to other stretches. There were some flat stretches like the start of the second half, but again, just the ability to kind of find ways to get that team moving. And that's the most important thing we've talked about. The offense, when it moves, works. That's what it's supposed to be. When it's stagnant, it looks worse than what we've seen. I mean, no, I won't say worse, but as bad as what we've seen the last few years. Just nothing going on, and it winds up with one-on-one and a late shot clock. You can't do that. And so Trey being out there really, really changed this game.
And Coach, I want to give actually honorable mention for this to a guy who didn't play, and that's Anthony Leal, who has gone from, starting to get minutes to starting to not playing at all tonight. And if you watch the bench, who was the first guy up every time something good happened?
Yep.
Looking as genuinely happy as you'll ever see somebody. And that stuff matters, because energy is something that you can't really quantify it. But if you have guys bringing bad energy to the bench, it can rub off on the other guys. And so just knowing that a guy like Anthony Leal is that team first, that he's able to really genuinely celebrate and be excited, even when he's not getting any minutes now because his buddy is back and taking over. Man, I think that stuff matters for the culture of your program. And I love seeing that. And that's why he's such a fan favorite.
Absolutely agree that bench energy is a key component. It's not out there diving on the floor, setting screen, guarding people, blocking out, doing all that. But if you have bench energy, A, guys are ready to come in and do their job if they're called on. And two, there isn't that negative vibe of I'm not playing, so I'm just going to sit here and not enjoy the success of the teammates. It can help pick teammates up when they're down. Sometimes we cut clips of the bench energy in our game clips in our basketball program just to compliment those guys that don't get a lot of run, that they have vital parts of the game. I thought that was awesome. And again, I will also say Rob Finney's 2 jump balls. Whether it's meaningful moment you miss or whatever, and then add to that the bench energy, his huge smile that was caught on camera after the other one at 4:15, but it prevented a score at the 8:15 mark or whatever, and Trey gets steal and goes out and scores, and it becomes 49-45 after his first jump ball, and his second one was at 4:15. And again, kind of finished the game a little bit there, and it was a smile, which is so important because Rob plays so tight and tense sometimes that it was good to see him enjoying his performance. He didn't have any assists. I think he made a couple shots there, but Leo's contribution on the bench, a couple jump balls, that's what winning teams do. You have 13 scholarship guys, some, and some walk-ons, and everyone has a part, whether they get some run, don't get some run, play some minutes, fill the stat sheet or not. And we saw it tonight. That's Indiana basketball. I said Trey Galloway in our text was a throwback Indiana player. The Indiana basketball that we remember was full of those guys that did little things. Joe Hillman, Steve Isle, guys like that would come in and do, Finkelmeyer, maybe not so much, but just guys that play the game the right way and contribute. And so I think you're absolutely spot on. And I see a lot of talk about Galloway moving into the starting line. I don't think so. I think he's a spark off the bench, and I love him in that role. And I know he did well. And a lot of times you think the best player in the previous game should start the next game, but no, it's all about rotations. And matchups and everything. Yes. And then he'll end up playing with the first unit like he did in the second unit, or in the second half, at crunch time. But, man, what a downhill presence he adds with X being downhill and Galloway downhill that gives some options to Coach Woodson as far as rotations.
One thing I want to mention before we get to lingering questions, Jared, is you remember the last big home win Indiana had. That was St. John's. And they limped to the finish in that. And basically, if that game had lasted 5 minutes longer, I think we all agree St. John's would have won.
Yep.
They finished the game over the last 6-17 with a 15-3 run. They closed this game emphatically. And that is enormous to smell blood in the water and to attack. And
they won't get credit for winning a close game because they didn't allow it to be close.
Yeah. They just stepped on their throat and kept doing it. And it was the defense. I think it was all predicated on the defense. The defense was as good as it was the whole game in the last 5 minutes. They just were swarming and they could sense it. The crowd was getting into it and they could sense it. Boom. they just really hammered down defensively. And then, when you have the chances, they had a couple breakaway layups. Galloway had one. Galloway had that, of course, that alley-oop to Trace. I mean, they just took advantage of the fact that, when you're up a little bit on a team like that, they're getting desperate. All right, now's the time. When they're desperate, they're going to make mistakes. Let's hammer down and get this finished. So that 15-3 run to finish it is, such a big thing that they didn't just barely eke this out. They finished emphatically against a good team.
That's so nice to have the last 2.5 minutes or so where you're not stressing out every darn possession. You just make sure, you miss a three after possession, right?
After the last decade, yes, coach. This is very enjoyable.
I sat there at the 3-minute mark saying, can I relax? Do I get StreamYard open? Can I get ready to go? And it was nice that finished the whole second half, the whole game. Actually, there was a lot of positives because you're never going to have 40, superb minutes, but I just thought this was much needed.
And, as we kind of look forward now, and a lot of people are mentioning this, in the chat, it's like, okay, let's settle down a little bit and let's see what they do next game. Cause the last post-game show was very moribund and melancholy. And now here we are 40 minutes of basketball later and all is right with the world again.
How do you deal with
it reminds me a little bit. You remember the win at Iowa last year, it's like, boy, we played amazing, but that whole show we were like, but it only matters if they can back this up with a good win against Rutgers.
Yeah. How'd that turn out?
Laid a freaking egg. Right. So, this weekend's game against Minnesota is really important. Now, it's a home game. They're not going on the road, but you got to back this up with another good performance. Minnesota, not as good as Ohio State. There's no reason to not come out, play well, and beat them. Take care of business at home. So you can't – I think that one of the big problems with the Archie Miller era is you had these islands. It was like, whoa, we won at Michigan State. Whoa, we won at Iowa. Whoa, we beat Ohio State at home. But they would never back it up with anything, and you could never build any momentum. Well, if, we want to see this program be a little bit different, all right, we lost at Penn State. We didn't play well. We were on the wrong end of some shooting variance. That game sucked. But, now we had this good win. Let's back it up, and then let's back it up again. Let's start building some positive momentum. We haven't seen it in half a decade, so let's actually start to see it.
Yeah,
but
they
lingering
dealt – Oh, let me real quick. They dealt with failure at Penn State really well by coming out and blowing the doors off of Ohio State. Now, how do you deal with success? That's always important. It's always about what you do with that big win or that big loss. How do you respond to it? That's what makes a college basketball team, is just figuring out how to deal with those things. Indiana has not dealt well with success or failure really well for a long time. And let's see if maybe this is a new chapter.
Jonathan Goodman asks, what did Mark Titus have going on tonight? Mark often comes on and joins us for the Indiana-Ohio State postgame shows. I did text him. He actually had to do his own show tonight. So we're going to try and get him on when Indiana-Ohio State play later on in the season. But my lingering question coming out of this game, and, we kind of frame this, coach, as a positive early on where it's like, whoa, Indiana, 2 for 15 from downtown, and they still win. Well, 2 for 15, what were we against Penn State? 4 of 17 from downtown. That 37% three-point percentage has dropped down into the 34s. I've been on record consistently this season that I wasn't really buying that real lofty shooting. I don't think we're as bad as we've been the last couple games. What is this team shooting-wise, though? Because, it's nice to win these games like this, but if we're going to win 11, 12 games in the Big Ten, we've got to shoot better than we did the last couple nights, to help make up for some of those nights when the other things aren't going for you. Three-pointers can be a nice equalizer. We got to start making more of those. What are we going to settle into, do you think, as a three-point shooting team?
Probably some combination, between the two extremes. To be honest with you, we were at a very high percentage in hitting. But the key thing for me, Jared, tonight was open shots. I thought Indiana got open shots. And I believe they'll hit more open shots than what they hit tonight. They missed. But they didn't get as open a shots, I didn't think, at Penn State. The offense, as designed tonight and executed tonight, created better shots. That's the fundamental thing. And then obviously if we don't hit them over the next 3, 4, 5 games, then it's a shooting problem. But I think a lot of times our shooters were just stationary and people were locking down on our shooters, and you had to take some late shot clocks are added into the stats and all of that. So, if you can get 35, 36 as a team overall, if you're running Parker and Miller and Tamar, I'd like to see Tamar coming off screens and just getting them little jumpers instead of having to create off the bounce. You know, let him do that after people have to close out hard on him, hit a couple shots, pull up jumpers at the elbow or curls at the elbow that he can hit. I think you'll see a little more consistent shooting than the last two games. Tonight's shots were good shots. They just didn't go in. You look at a team like Penn State, they did it again at Northwestern, like 5 late shot clock falling away threes. That's something that's probably not sustainable. I think, you know, Parker and Miller have shown that when they're open, they're going to hit at a decent clip. So I'm not concerned yet.
The other lingering question, and, you know, Ryan, this made its way into our text chain earlier tonight. You know, and while we're on, you know, this is the night for exuberance about Trey Galloway because of his awesome performance and coming back. So let's indulge in an all things possible moment. What's his ceiling as a player if he can become a threat from outside?
If he hits 30% from 3 by the time he's gone, he'll be an all Big Ten threat. Because of the energy he brings on both sides. And you know he's a great driver and finisher. I mean, he's fantastic when he gets in there.
By the way, that one up and under he had, we haven't talked about that.
We've seen him do that before.
Beautiful.
That didn't even surprise me. He does that. He's a wizard with those angles and with the ball, and his ability just to be aggressive and drive in. You know, as a freshman, he got rejected a few times because he wasn't strong enough. And guys would just get him into bad angles, falling more away than going directly at the hoop. But if he can hit 30% from 3, which is not that for a guard, for a wing player is not that high, but if he can be a threat from out there, and the reason I say 30 isn't because of a statistical thing, it's because it makes it a threat when he's standing out there by himself. If he can do that, it makes him a threat. It's going to open up all the driving lanes for him. He's a guy who could easily average 14, 15 points a game, I think, because of his ability to get into the teeth of the defensive finish, if he can step out and shoot. Because teams are going to just start playing off of him until he proves he can make a jumper.
Yeah. Coach, any lingering thoughts on the potential for Trey Galloway?
Boy, I want to see him hit a 3 and then hit another 3 and then hit another 3. And then we really have nothing super special. I don't want to get over our skis too much, but I love his attitude. He's a coach's kid, and obviously I'm biased towards coaches' kids. They just know how to do things, and he is just, you know, I don't know if it's all Big Ten or whatever, but he's going to be an Indiana guy that we all appreciate after he's gone, and he's going to help win a lot of ball games if this continues. I was more happy with his defense tonight than anything else.
His movement on D was fantastic.
Yeah. There's a great tweet from Cliff Marshall. He's got a video of Trey on like an elliptical or something working out. He said, "So proud of Trey Galloway. He returned tonight from being out for 2 months with a broken wrist, worked extremely hard behind the scenes while no one was watching, never complained, just worked. Tonight it showed." And it did. Great performance from Trey Galloway. Just, you know, I texted you guys late in the game. Man, I just found myself at the end of that second half. It was fun. I was just proud of them. You know, it's like, man, they bounced back. They overcame a rough start, and they played together, and they played hard, and they played smart. Like this is all. We're a demanding fan base, but we don't ask for things that are crazy. We just want to watch our team play hard, play together, and play smart. They didn't do it at the start, but man, they got into it for stretches tonight, and it was so much fun to watch.
Yeah,
so
win by 16 every night.
Part of a game like that. Yeah, that's all we ask.
All we ask.
Especially against top 15 teams, guys. Come on. What's hard about that?
That is all we ask. All right. So upcoming schedule. Obviously, tonight is Thursday, so there's no Assembly Call radio. Sunday, Minnesota. Coach, I guess my other lingering question, things felt hopeless from an NCAA tournament perspective after Penn State. Now things feel good again. Give me the up-to-the-moment bracketology as it relates to Indiana
we need
basketball.
to produce a bracket tomorrow. Real busy guy, and we kind of had our meeting today, so I was going to go with what we decided today, and Indiana was out as of this morning. But they now have a quad 1 win, and they also have earned a quad 2 win with Notre Dame's beating of North Carolina. And so now when you compare those to those teams that were on the 10 and 11 seed line, and Indiana's net is going to go way up because of its defensive numbers tonight. So I would imagine Indiana's net is going to be at the low 40s or high 30s. And so I'm just going to do it because I'm in charge of the dang club. Indiana's going to be in our bracket tomorrow. I mean, we deserve some damn good news. And whether it's the right analysis or not, Indiana will be in the bracket tomorrow based on this win. So, but seriously,
bracketology. Finish up.
I honestly think that they are the last 4 teams in have weak resumes. No quad 1 wins, but a couple quad 2 wins. This is a top 13 win over a top 3 or 4 seed. Those are golden, and those will stay. So I think that differentiates ourselves from Wake Forest and some other teams that Indiana might replace that we had in. So that's good news for me, and I'm going to stay up till about 2 in the morning making sure that they're at least in the 11 seed line or the 10 seed line because we need it. At least some good news.
And frankly, there's been a little bit too much black and gold propaganda coming out of the Delphi Bracketology Twitter account, so I think you need to bring some balance.
I'm guilty. We're a basketball website. Emily calls my Indiana outlet. Delphi Bracketology is about basketball.
You are listening to the Assembly Call. Remember to check out our friends at Home Field Apparel. Use the promo code HOME, HOME, at checkout to get 15% off your first order. All right, guys, it is time for last call. Ryan, why don't you lead us off?
Just a great win. I mean, if you're looking for the first great win of the Mike Woodson era, you got it tonight. 67-51, 16-point drubbing of the 13th ranked team in the country, and an Ohio State team that rarely plays poorly. I think somebody tweeted they've only lost by 16 or more once in the last 6 years or something like that. They're usually in the game. They play very well. They're a very smart team. They're a very well coached team, and they've got some really good players this year, as you saw tonight. Indiana was just the better team tonight, and Indiana proved that it can be a top 25 team. It can be a top 15 team if things break right. This is a good basketball team. There is a lot of talent on this team, and even on a night where they shoot 2 of 15 from 3 and don't get their 2 3-point shooters really going offensively, they still won by 16. And that's because of the depth and talent of this roster, which has always been there. It just needs to be utilized correctly by the players and by, being put in the right situations. Finally felt like it was a fully healthy roster. And look what happened. This is possible for Indiana. This is absolutely possible. They just have to go out and grab it. It's there for them. The Big Ten is not as fierce as it usually is this year. It doesn't look like it so far. Maybe by the end of the year it will. This is a team that can make some noise. May not win a Big Ten championship, may not make the Elite Eight, anything like that. This is a team that can make some noise with the talent it has. You got an All-American to build around, and you've got some really talented guys around him. This is a team that can make some noise and set this program up for the future to be really darn good. So it's important. It's a very important season for Indiana basketball. Getting a win like this is great. You got to follow it up with some good ones, something we didn't see the last team do.
Jen, with a very interesting question. Does anyone else feel like Ryan is about to burst into song? Ryan, would you like to?
No.
Would you like to do that?
I'm
this is Sleep Dio Double Dizzle.
maybe a rap.
Winning's fun.
Winning is fun.
winning is fun.
I just want to know,
is so much easier.
I want to know what song was playing in Jen's, what melody was going in Jen's head that she thought Ryan was going to bust into song with. Where was that going for her? I'm very curious. By the way, Bill Simmons is trending. So Ryan, you may need to go hop off and cover something.
Yeah,
for the big
later,
league.
guys.
I don't know why.
Probably Celtics related. The Celtics were winning by 26 points and lost to the Knicks. The Knicks were 1-229 when trailing by 25 points over the last 25 years and won tonight.
Do I have? Where's that one drop of you talking about Bill Simmons? Do you remember?
No.
Damn it! I don't know where it is.
Here it is.
90% of his basketball opinions are moronic.
There you go.
It was a Bill Simmons drop.
I stand by it.
All right, Coach. Last call.
This was Indiana's most complete game. We've talked about consistency, one half, second half, a little bit of runs. This was Indiana's most complete game. And now the word consistency goes from game to game. And then it goes to Minnesota game, and then it goes, can you play consistently on the road? And that goes for the coaching staff too. There was a lot of doubt in my mind of where we were headed and what we were doing after the lack of offensive creativity and play calling at Penn State, they fixed it. And so that's what you do when you have an off night. You go back and you fix it. So kudos to the coaching staff. Kudos to Trace Jackson-Davis for getting more than 5 rebounds. But it was our most complete game. And I'll remind people that Duke was up. I don't know the actual total, but Ohio State made a late run in the last 4 or 5 minutes of a game that Duke had probably won, 7-8 point lead or something like that. And Ohio State turned the tables real quick and then ended on a 15-2 run. So when Indiana finishes on that type of run to put that game away, and the 7.785 stats, these are things that travel. So as Jared mentioned earlier, and so just the hope is not to get too high and think we've arrived, because we haven't until we do this 3 or 4 games in a row. But it's a lot more enjoyable than what we felt Sunday, and it makes the heading into the weekend enjoyable.
Yeah, well, it was, like I said earlier, it was fun, and I'm proud of these guys. And I think you think back to that Penn State game, and I think the reason why Indiana fans had such a hard time processing that game, I mean, the most important reason, because Indiana didn't play well. I mean, you can talk about all the shooting variance and all this stuff, and that is all true, but Indiana still just didn't play well. Like that shouldn't have mattered. That's a Penn State team Indiana should be able to beat on a night when they don't, even if the other team shoots well and they don't. And, more so even than the stagnant offense, it kind of felt like a return of the joylessness. Like there just wasn't a lot of energy on the team. They didn't look like they were having fun. And I think that was kind of jarring to us, because the narrative through the first part of this Mike Woodson era is, wow, look at the energy they're playing with and the togetherness, and they're having fun. And like something just felt off about that game. And then you got Woodson calling out Trace, and it's like, what's going on here? And tonight seemed to right that. It didn't start out well, but they got the spark they needed. Their star was a star. Everybody else kind of filled their roles, and it got back to feeling like what we thought this was going to feel like. And I think that was always the hope after the Penn State game. It's like, all right, this is a bad performance, but hopefully in a couple months we look back on it and it's like, that's the island. This is what we need to get to as a program, where those poor performances, like, okay, you're going to have a couple of those every year, but it was surrounded by good play. And tonight was a really important step toward putting that in the rearview mirror and hopefully building some good momentum. But again, we won't know until Sunday when Indiana plays Minnesota. Then they go on the road to Iowa, on the road to Nebraska. These are 3 very winnable games. And it's a huge opportunity, to pick up an important home win, get a road win or 2, and really start to build some momentum. We haven't seen that a lot in Big Ten play, but if the Hoosiers can do it early, in the Big Ten season here now, it's really going to set them up well for what they have to do in the back half, when the pressure starts to build a little bit for the NCAA tournament. But, great win tonight for Indiana, top to bottom, good performances by the players who were out there. And it was just wonderful to see Trey Galloway back out there doing Trey Galloway things, and, seeing Trace play like an All-American. Awesome win tonight for the Hoosiers. All right, that is going to do it for us. If you want to see us do the show live and be part of the live chat, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/assemblycall. And don't forget to go to join.assemblycall.com to join our free email newsletter. Special thanks to Bob Thompson for the music that you hear on the show, and special thank you to John Ringer of Rig Design for designing our logo. And thank you for listening. Where is it here? Oh man, I was trying to find the Mark Titus. There it is.
Take it from me, native Hoosier Mark Titus. Keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim. And go Hoosiers.
It had to be Titus tonight.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out.
All right, I got to get out of here, folks. Thank you. Yo, this is Sneep Dio Double Dizzle.
All right. That was fun.
Good night, everybody.
We need to win more games.
Makes life so much better.
Yes, it does. By the way, if you didn't hear, we are coming in town for the Illinois game, February 5th. We are going to be doing an event at Switchyard after the game. And we're like this close to finalizing a player guest to be there, and work on some others, but hopefully that will happen. I'll announce that once it's all finalized, but we'd love to have as many of you come out as possible. We'll be getting in Friday. We'll do our team dinner. Then we'll be out Friday night. So if you're going to be in Bloomington, we'd love to see you, love to hang out. And then Saturday we'll be at the game. Yeah, we'll be at the game Saturday. hanging out afterwards at Switchyard, and then can try and go to the women's game on Sunday. I'll probably only be able to stay for about half of it.
What time is
but
it scheduled for?
It's at noon.
Okay.
My flight
I'll
leaves
be
Indy
out.
at like 5, so
Yeah, I won't be able to make it, unfortunately.
I don't know how much of it I'll be able to see. But Jen says she's not sure where Switchyard is. It is on Kirkwood.
No.
It's on
it's not
College.
on Kirkwood. Yeah, it's on College. That's what I meant.
It's just past Sports, Kilroy Sports.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, it's easy to find, so that'll be fun. All right, guys.
Or just, we have this amazing thing called the internet. Just type it in. You'll find it.
That is very condescending.
I didn't mean it like that.
I don't appreciate that.
I mean it like
Jen's over here
it's
like
easy to
imagining you singing songs, and instead you're just condescending to her.
No, I just
That's
mean it's
not
easy
right.
to find. It's all right in your phone, right here.
You don't think she knows that? She's
Well,
asking
she's
her friends for
asking.
help. That's like
Okay.
Jay. He puts this what's the new word game that folks are playing on Twitter? And I asked him about it, and he says, "Why don't you just Google wordplay?" Yeah, Jay, I know I can Google things. Thought I would ask my friend instead.
I mean, you're on the internet right now, Jared. Why don't you just do it in another window? It's
because you know what? We can't lose our personal.
no.
connection
What I
and
meant
our
was
ability to
what I
help
meant
each
was if
other
you're having
out.
trouble. What I meant was if you're having trouble find it, put it in your map. There you go. It's right.
Boys, if I have to stop this vehicle, there's going to be hell to pay.
Can you
I know,
imagine
but
a road trip with
I can't
Jared
do
and
as
I?
many
Oh my
shows, so we
God.
gotta
I
get
pull
our
over this
jabs in
car.
while we're both here. It's more fun.
I will be
All right,
at the game
guys.
Sunday, so I won't be able to be on the show. But if anyone's in Assembly Hall, stop by, and if you see me, say hello.
Yeah, first week 18 of the NFL season, so I'm going to be doing that all day Sunday. That's fun.
Oh crap! All right, well I got to figure out who's hosting that
Yeah.
show.
I'm
We
out.
got
I'm
some
out
work to do.
Sundays. I'm just out, and especially during the playoffs. Saturdays and Sundays probably. I don't know about
Okay.
Saturdays, but yeah, the weekends are tough till the Super Bowl.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll see.
I know you'll
See
miss
who's
me.
available for Sunday.
We don't get to have as much fun as this. I'm sorry, Jay.
Hey, Eddie, I owe you a drink, so maybe either before or after, let me know where you're at. I owe you for letting you down today, Eddie Small. So
How'd
get
you
a
let
hold
him
of me. He wanted me to pick Galloway for game ball.
So you let him down by being right, and
Yeah, but
trying to
Eddie's a
guide him
great-
to a sensible decision.
Eddie's a great dude, man. I met him at a tailgate. We had a good conversation. You know,
Sure he
you
is.
gotta.
Ryan's a great dude, but he's wrong.
No,
Okay.
I'm not that. I mean, I'm a little overrated. Let's be honest. A little
I'm
overrated.
feeling feisty. I need to go on another podcast.
No
and
kidding.
argue with people.
Someone needs to give you some peas. Eat them dang peas you were giving your son.
Yeah, I thought I was. I thought I was
You need a
downright,
Snickers. Jared needs a Snickers.
I was downright pleasant tonight. I thought, and
I thought
Jared
so
was just
too. My
vicious.
goodness.
Just trying to bring the conflict to the show. Conflict
Sure.
makes good content. You know. Come on.
That's what they tell you. They keep telling
just
yourself
having
that.
fun.
All
All
right,
right,
everybody.
All right, guys. Have a good one. We will see you
Adios,
all
everybody.
Sunday.
Later.
See y'all.